Movies and TV shows bring to life so many of our deepest desires and let us vicariously experience worlds and lives we could only dream of. But just as often, we're shown the flip side and reminded that we should be careful what we wish for. Sometimes it just serves as a reminder that we shouldn't forget to be grateful for what we already have, but other times it can get quite a bit darker. So let's take a deeper look at this trope's function as a cautionary tale to unpack the message we should really be taking to heart. The "be careful what you wish for" trope is a staple across genres, but especially in fantasy and horror, where supernatural beings and objects trick gullible people to ruin their lives without realizing until it's too late. First published in 1902, W. Jacobs' short story, The Monkey's Paw, has seen endless page-to-screen adaptations. In the ominous tale, a man named Mr. White takes the titular artifact, a mummified monkey's paw that can grant 3 wishes to whoever possesses it, from a friend, who immediately warns him of the disastrous consequences that will befall anyone who attempts to use it to change their fate. Encouraged by his son Herbert, the man ignores the warnings and wishes for £200 to help their finances. The next day, Herbert dies in a horrific accident at work, and the company gives his family $200 in compensation. Mrs. White's grief pushes her to wish for her dead son to return, and soon there's a knock at the door. But realizing that it won't be their actual son, but just some horrifying reanimated version of his already decomposing body, Mr. White quickly uses his last wish to undo whatever was done, and the knocking stops. We've seen this story played out in so many of our favorite movies and TV shows, like an episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark, where 2 boys up to no good get a twisted claw that grants them 3 wishes. It's played for laughs in The Simpsons' second Treehouse of Horror special, showing the family making mostly selfish wishes that backfire. Buffy the Vampire Slayer used this trope multiple times throughout the series, mostly thanks to the vengeance demons, like the time Cordelia wished to erase Buffy.
I wish Buffy Summers had never come to Sunnydale.
Which ended in her dying, because without Buffy, there was no one around to save her. In a Season 7 episode, a girl is humiliated and mocked for being dumped in front of everyone, and in feeling utterly heartbroken, wishes that they all knew what it was like to have their heart ripped out of their chests, which ends exactly how you'd imagine. Season 5's Forever sees Dawn trying to revive her mom just like Mrs. White, but thankfully, before she can see her walking corpse, Buffy talks her out of it, knowing whatever comes back wouldn't be their mom. Genies have long been portrayed as benevolent helpers and as sinister tricksters, and just like with the Monkey's Paw, their granting of wishes usually comes with unintended consequences. In What We Do in the Shadows, Nandor gets 52 wishes granted by a djinn, whose job is to show their masters the error of their ways.
I teach lessons about greed, desire, etc. by with the wishes of my so-called masters.
Nandor has to very carefully choose his words because every detail can and will likely be intentionally misinterpreted in a way that makes his life harder, not better. Aladdin uses this loophole to entrap Jafar, encouraging him to wish for absolute power, only to be made into a genie, who, as we know, is enslaved inside a lamp until a new master comes along. In The Princess and the Frog, the privileged but stifled Prince Naveen is lured by Dr. Facilier and believes his voodoo magic will free him to hop from place to place by making him independently wealthy with green. But like the evil trickster he is, Facilier interprets these words literally, taking away Naveen's humanity and turning him into a frog. Sometimes stories take these wishes one step further, having characters make deals with the devil. While Monkey's Paw and Genie wishes usually lead to negative consequences unintentionally or through trickery, when making a deal with the devil, you know exactly what you're giving up to get what you asked for. And the pain comes from realizing just how much your own greed and ego ruined your own life.
And there's always a trick. And a price.
Chilling Adventures of Sabrina's Daniel Webster sold his soul to the devil looking to become a more successful lawyer. But of course, there was a catch. He ended up defending the worst of the worst and making sure these dangerous criminals always got free. And in the end, he faced one of the worst consequences of all, as one of the very people he freed took the life of his own daughter.
And after I freed him, when I wasn't home, he broke in. And he did those things to my daughter.
When the fall of the House of Ushers, Roderick and Madeline Usher were young, a mysterious woman promised them a more than privileged life for their present and future family. But at the end of it, everyone had to die together.
They could live decades with every luxury, every opportunity. Or they could live a little longer, but struggle.
They accepted the deal pretty quickly, but decades later, all of his kids would die in gruesome ways. In all of these kinds of stories, the deal-makers are punished for their endless ambition, but more specifically, their impatience with reaching success. Sure, some of them still work hard, but their deals and wishes give them a significant boost. And in some stories, the very things they desired become their punishment. In The Sandman, a writer enslaves a muse so he can keep his career going. When he refuses to set her free, Dream essentially curses him with what he wanted.
If it's ideas you want, then you shall have them. In abundance.
Jealousy is something we're all guilty of from time to time. We see someone with the attributes, successes, or possessions that we want, and we can't help but long for the same. But trying to change your life by mimicking or stealing someone else's can have its consequences too. Wonder Woman 1984's Barbara Minerva is portrayed as a mousy nerd who worships her coworker Diana. She wants to have that confidence and the power that comes with it. After she uses the Dream Stone, she discovers she has new abilities which allow her to look and feel attractive, but also feel safe in her own skin, able to protect herself.
Turns out wishing to be like you came with some surprises.
But in this process, she also loses her true self, the good part of her that Diana admired. This concept is at the center of body swap comedies. One person thinks someone else's life is easier/better than their own, and through some magical method, they wish to trade places. Sometimes this is because a kid wants their parents to understand how difficult life is for them, and vice versa.
Anna, high school is not that hard.
You couldn't last one day in my high school.
Oh, honey, you need a serious and bracing reality check if you think my life is perfect.
Freaky Friday, in its various adaptations, is the quintessential body swap story, where a mother and her teenage daughter end up living life as the other. They quickly realize how wrong they were about each other's daily struggles, and it strengthens their relationship. This also happens with siblings, like in DC's DCOM Wish Upon a Star. Smart loner Haley and her popular mean girl sister Alexia never get along, but in making their wishes and literally walking in each other's shoes, they realize that they don't hate each other. They secretly envy each other. There's a time in a kid's life, usually puberty, when they desperately want their parents to stop treating them like children. They want more freedom to hang out with their friends, go places on their own, go on dates, or to just be taken seriously. But over the course of their story, they usually come to find that actually being a kid is pretty great, and they're happy to hold off on the whole adulthood thing for a little while longer. On Ginny and Georgia, Ginny confronts her mother Georgia about how she's tired of being treated like a kid and wants to be treated like an adult, not realizing all of the dark truths she's been protected from up to this point, like her mom's traumatic past, or that they're struggling financially.
We're dead broke.
What?
Dead freaking broke. Welcome to adulthood. It sucks.
13 going on 30's Jenna was just too eager to reach adulthood, and her wish to be 30 and flirty and thriving skipped over an entire life, only to find that she hated the awful person she had become, and that she had a romanticized notion of being in your 30s that didn't really line up with reality. We can see a dark example of this trope in Game of Thrones as Sansa Stark. She begged her mother to let her marry Prince Joffrey Baratheon and become queen one day. But instead of the fantasy royal life she had dreamed of, her life in King's Landing was filled with misery and pain.
Please let me go home. I won't do any treason, I swear.
Mother says I'm still to marry you, so you'll stay here and obey.
As this trope appears so often and in so many different iterations, it has come to be interpreted in a number of ways. The more positive outlook is that these stories of wishes gone wrong remind us to appreciate what we already have and not to get consumed by jealousy or greed. Shows like Goosebumps and Are You Afraid of the Dark are morality tales in the form of spooky entertainment, teaching kids that actions have consequences, including making a wish that negatively impacts another person.
Be careful what you wish for. You might just get it.
However, many versions, particularly the ones dealing with adults, can begin to lean into feeling like we're being told that we should never want more than what we already have. And if we somehow find a way to achieve more or elevate our station, we deserve any bad things that happen as a result. And even if our wish does come true, any feeling of happiness will only be temporary.
Here's the thing about wishes. The more you have, the more you want.
Because now we're on a never-ending cycle of being unsatisfied and always wanting more. In an interesting twist on the trope, The Good Place reminds us that too much of a good thing can be boring. Having been tricked into not knowing they were actually in the bad place all along, they learn that even in the real good place, everything being perfect ultimately leaves everyone unhappy.
On paper, this is paradise. All your desires and needs are met, but it's infinite. And when perfection goes on forever, you become this glassy-eyed mush person.
Instead, the group is able to find true contentment through other means, not by giving up their quest for more or getting stuck in a good rut, but instead just focusing on evolving as people and learning from their experiences. At the heart of the "be careful what you wish for" trope is the idea that we shouldn't expect there to be any one magical solution to our problems, and that setting all of our goals on that kind of singular wish for change will likely lead to disappointment, or even worse. But just because we shouldn't give up everything for a long-shot dream of turning back the clock or instantly improving everything doesn't mean that we shouldn't dream at all. It's just that instead of getting stuck on the idea that one thing, one wish, one adjustment will fix everything, we should instead try to focus on the larger picture of changes we can make in ourselves, in our families, in our communities, and in the world at large. We don't need a mummified monkey or a genie as long as we have each other. That's the take. Click here to watch a video we think you'll love, or here to check out a whole playlist of awesome content. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. And make sure to subscribe to our Patreon for exclusive new videos.